Welcome to this presentation. I'm Lynn Wilson and I'm going to be sharing some case studies and concepts with you to accelerate textile circularity and zero waste. This is a pre-recorded high-level session to enable you to stop and start as you take in information and perhaps want to do further research on a specific area. I hope that by the end of the presentation, you will have found something useful and informative, possibly to take forward in your own work. I'm going to start with the context of the shift from the linear to the circular economy, followed by addressing circular textile supply chains, and then on to textile and garment engineering. This will be followed by textile design and production systems, and concluded with reducing consumption through looking at circular business models. In a report in 2020, it was identified that Scotland generates 166,000 tonnes of textile waste per annum. The study found that in the UK, it was the fourth largest producer of textile waste in Europe. Around 48% of textiles are recovered in some way, but 75% of landfill textile waste is domestic, with over 30,000 tonnes of clothing alone going to landfill. And how does this occur? Well, Scotland has two key textile flows: consumption and production. When it comes to consumption, the majority of textile-related products purchased in Scotland will be imported via the UK market and sold onto our high streets, our local shops, and online. The challenge we have is that we don't know where it all goes and where it ends up. Whilst we have a range of disposal points available to us, in the main, once a product has been disposed of, we don't know where it goes. The second textile area is production, and Scotland has been producing some form of textile since the 4th century. Manufacturers need to, in the main, import raw materials from international suppliers to make products to sell to the rest of the UK and abroad. However, again, beyond the first point of sale, we don't actually know where anything made in Scotland will end up. And this is problematic when we're trying to develop a circular system. The textile and leather industry is developing a number of strategic initiatives, including an export strategy with ambitions to enter and develop new markets and to make the Scottish textile industry internationally synonymous with luxury fashion and textiles, which it already has a head start. They have a sustainability strategy for the industry, which will be key in achieving sustainability ambitions, with a provision of modern apprenticeships in the sector with an extremely high uptake for the scale of industry, reflecting the highly skilled careers offered. There are plans to extend that provision and a skills strategy for the industry is currently being prepared, but it's not clear how circular or sustainable skills focused that strategy is. So in terms of the current textile supply chain, here we have the linear supply chain, and it's a problem because as both consumers and producers, we are operating within this linear system, which starts with raw fibre, whether that's a polymer from a fossil fuel or a natural regenerative fibre such as cotton or wool. This is then processed into a yarn, into textile. It then is made into a product. Then it enters into a whole logistics system that is carbon intensive before it's retailed either online or in a physical store. And at the end, it ends up with the consumer, with consumers who, just for example, with clothing, 92 million tonnes of clothing is landfilled globally annually. And that amounts to, in the current rate of a tonne of textiles, about £11.4 billion in material alone, never mind the other unseen costs and environmental catastrophe that this causes when we find clothing buried in South American deserts or in other areas, other continents where it ends up. So this goes back to my point about we really don't know where a product ends up. The United Nations Environment Programme have adopted the methodologies of Cradle to Cradle, Baumgarten, McDonough, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Circular Economy to come up with this circular textile system. And within the system, we can see that it starts with material sourcing, identifying a material. What we don't see here is design, and generally we know that the circular economy is regenerative by design. So all of these design decisions need to be made in the first place. So designers need to identify the material that they want to work with in order to for that fibre to be prepared for them. The raw materials identified, the yarn is prepared in terms of the spinning. We then identify what type of process the textile is, whether that's a woven textile, a knitted or a bonded. It then goes through additional processes which are carbon intensive, water intensive, such as bleaching and dyeing. And then we have the assembly of the product, whether that's anything from a towel to a garment to a carpet to a sofa, any textile. It's then distributed and retailed. Again, we talked about logistics earlier on and the carbon intensity of this, and then it comes to consumer use. And during the consumer use phase, we have this is a very resource intensive phase, and then the consumer at the end of product life, or the end of useful life for consumer, they have the opportunity to dispose of it, and it depends how consumer disposes of that product, whether it has a second life, whether it goes to landfill, whether the parts are repurposed. And this really relies on the robustness and the quality of the product in order to ensure that it has a second life or a longer life. But again, I keep iterating that point that unless we know where this product has come from, where it's going, what's in it, it's really difficult to know where it's best placed to have that second life. And so to address the issue of traceability, the European Union has implemented a European extended producer responsibility, which will be introduced in the UK in the next few years. And whilst I'm not covering legislation today, the UNEP has also called for voluntary product action to accelerate transparency in the supply chain for issues related to human rights, health and safety, as well as the environment. This means there is an urgent need and a great opportunity to develop new technology tracking systems, RFID systems, digital technologies, QR codes, blockchain, and systems to support the data that will be generated. And I think it's about not waiting for any type of legislation, but really how we take the technology knowledge that we have and start to really develop transparency systems. And we're constantly challenged every day by hearing about resource challenges and the threat to our beautiful planet. And so it's even more urgent to identify systems. And here we have Helixa from Switzerland, who have developed physical traceability through DNA technology. And this enables an impregnation of a liquid into a fibre at the point of production, and this then creates a unique DNA marker within that product that then can be traced throughout the life cycle of that product. And it can be, this then means that if the producer implements this system, then they will be able to trace the life cycle of that product. And whilst I don't quite understand the whole complexity of the science behind it, I really encourage you to go to the Helixa website, who are a Swiss company, and have a look at this DNA technology, because I think this is the future of where we need to go with transparency and traceability in the supply chain. And this is just one example, but this is an area that really needs consideration and to be addressed by technologists. So moving on to fibre to yarn technology, this is quite a long section because fibre is critical. It is the raw material, it is the first stage in the process of a textile, and we really need to identify ways to reduce virgin resources. And so this part of the presentation is really going to focus on how we address fibre processing and the replacing of fossil fuel fibres. And this challenging image of an Extinction Rebellion protester protesting against climate change and being dragged away by police, for me, is symbolic of the current problem of global textile production and consumption, and evidence of how, according to the United Nations Environment Programme, the global textile industry contributes 5 to 8% of global carbon emissions. Whilst we see all different kinds of people in the photo, protester, police, photographers, journalists and bystanders, it's a rainy day, and they are all wearing polymer-based waterproof clothing, as well as the additional safety equipment of high-vis jackets and uniforms, demonstrating the different roles of society, from civilians to authority figures and the wider roles of society. Fossil fuel-derived clothing is the most dominant part of the image, as well as the wider built environment. And it's a necessary and useful part of life that we just couldn't imagine living without. But with 70% of textile predicted to be in the market by 2030, we really need to find alternatives to fossil fuel petrochemical based materials. So here we have some natural cellulose fibres, plant fibres, seagrass, cotton, which we have two types of cotton. We have organic cotton and Better Cotton Initiative. This is quite controversial because it's expected that the best solution is always organic cotton, and whilst that is essentially true and best for consumer, there is a challenge for farmers in international areas, cotton growing areas, where it is a huge expense for them to transition from being traditional cotton, pesticide cotton farming to automatically go to organic farming. And so Better Cotton Initiative, you can often see that on your underwear, undergarments, or often in t-shirts. We see Better Cotton Initiative, which is a sort of halfway house, is a support organisation to help farmers transition to healthier cotton growing. Hemp is very popular. It's a cheap fabric that's often used in the transportation of goods, and is very versatile and underused in Western markets. This is banana tex from banana fibre. This is another Swiss company, and they have demonstrated here the whole life cycle, the whole circular life cycle of a regenerative, bioregenerative fibre, which can be processed into the whole banana fibre is processed into a yarn, which is then extracted. They say it's extracted in the Philippines. It can be made into paper in Taiwan, or the yarn is spun also in Taiwan. Most, in fact, their production, weaving and beeswax coating. Of course, in Scotland, we have companies such as Halley Stevenson's, who are also waxed cotton manufacturers, and experimenting with coatings, more environmentally sustainable coatings such as beeswax. And then in their assembly process, Bananatek's partner company Q Weston is an accessory company, and so the main product that they make is bags, and they believe that through their process the banana textile is then regenerative if processed, if buried in the ground, if it's part of a disposal process. I think the key challenge we have here is that whether it is designed for disassembly and whether all parts can be bioregenerated, because here we see on the bag there is a zip, there is a metal zip there, and therefore in order to have that disposal regenerative process, the product needs to be modular designed in order for that to occur successfully. But the idea of banana fiber replacing again other robust fibers, fossil fuel robust fibers that we've been reliant on is really important. And if we can get that critical mass in the market of a broad range of different fiber types, and we can start to add coatings like beeswax coating to give it that waterproof finish that we're used to in a say a polymer based water jacket, then we can really start to transition and urgently reduce the need for petrochemical textile. In Scotland, we have a real swell and commitment to reintroducing flax fibre to Scotland, as with the potential to develop our own yarn and our own textile from flax. And this is Dr. John Ennis has been at the forefront of with his Journeys in Design organisation, has been at the forefront of reintroducing flax to Scotland. Other organisations such as Fibershed and the experimental project in the design school at Edinburgh College of Art are really championing the advancement of flax as an alternative fibre. And if just imagine the thought that if we were to have a national flax growing programme that really started to process fibre to a point where we have a yarn, to have a point where we could actually have a local manufacturing system from fibre. Again, going back to the idea that we have all of this product flowing into Scotland via the UK. We have the products that we use and the products that we manufacture. And the idea that we could have our own fibres in Scotland to create our own products, to keep that low carbon footprint, to keep the product developed locally, is a really exciting opportunity, and needs a lot of support behind it, and something to really investigate. With wool is the same, very traditional fibre to Scotland, but we have some key challenges right now with the wool sector, where most recently farmers have been observed to have burned or buried fleece rather than send it to the British Wool Marketing Board, just because the price per kilo has been so low, and there is considered because it is a byproduct of the meat industry, that it has much less value and is a lot of the time seen as an inconvenience to farmers and therefore something to be discarded. But we see a lot of new micro businesses, vertical micro design businesses setting up. In Scotland, we have the unique proposition of crofting, and we see designers leaving the city, setting up in crofting communities and creating their own vertical supply chain through having their own sheep flock that they can then, back to that traceability in the supply chain, they can start to develop a product where they are fully aware of the traceability of that raw material. On the right here, I have an example of a Scottish company, Friends of Wilson, an interior design company. These are wool felted panels. Whilst they are not Scottish wool, this is New Zealand merino wool. The panels are manufactured and processed in the UK. Because the fantastic thing about wool, it's got excellent soundproofing properties as well as bacterial properties. It's really healthy for us, and we can really start to think about how we support the British wool industry, how we start to really investigate wool as a key fibre, as opposed to polymers that can mimic wool and can hoodwink consumers into thinking they're buying a wool sweater, when actually if you look at the label, it's polymer or acrylic, and it's been highly impregnated with chemicals to give it that soft, fluffy feel of wool. But wool, in terms of it's antibacterial, we don't need to wash wool. If we have wool products, they can easily be hung out in a dry, windy day. They can be shaken. We don't need to wash them, and so it's a very low carbon, low energy intensive fibre for products, and it would be really great to see more UK wool based products made in the UK. But just to give you an example of what I meant by micro vertical farming, this is an example from Sweden, and another animal fibre, alpaca. And here we see the whole process. It starts with the shearing of the alpaca. They then have a scouring machine to clean all the grit and the dirt out of the fleece to process that fibre. The fibre, once it is completely clean, it then gets processed through a spinning machine. It then is processed into, spun into a single ply yarn, and then eventually into a double ply or a 4-ply yarn, which we can see on the right there. And I think it's really great to, whilst I know that we have alpaca in Scotland, we have some really fantastic alpaca farms. It's really great to see that our colleagues, our neighbours in Scandinavia are also really focused on this challenge of reintroducing natural fibres to the national resources to advance the use of natural fibre. And there's something really therapeutic and holistic in terms of being in that environment where you have the whole process and you can see the welfare of the animal. You can meet the animal. You can really examine the whole supply chain. And again, this is a really valuable part of a business's strategy in terms of that transparency that we're looking for in a sustainable circular supply chain. Man-made cellulosics, we've had lensing, Tencel. It's been around for really a good few years now. and you possibly have Textile garments or products in your home. It's a really good renewable source from wood pulp, from sustainably sourced wood pulp. Again, the biggest Textile processors are in Switzerland. And what we see here is Circle and from the Supernatural Runner, which is we begin to see trainers, running shoes, other sportswear products made of Textile, because it begins to mimic those qualities and properties that are traditionally we've had in fossil fuels and polymer-based chemically induced products. So we start to have a much healthier product, a product that not only is a closed loop and is industrially biodegradable, but is much healthier and much better for us. And then we have biosynthetic materials, again from renewable sources, no fertilizers used in the processing of bioplastics. They can be used for short-term use and are again disposable, biodegradable and regenerative. But I caution these terms biodegradable and regenerative because they really only work when they're part of a system. And if you have a material, a textile that is going in the residual bin, it doesn't matter what material it's made of, it is still going to mingle or co-mingle with that household or that industrial waste and create pollution and contamination. So we have to be very wary of biodegradable and regenerative terminologies, because really we're looking for that pure closed loop system, that take back. And here we have an example of that from Noosa, who, again, another international company, who have been working with GMO-free corn and lactic acid to create a fiber yarn from that process. And then from the fiber, they've been able to spin the yarn and create a textile, a fabric, which has then been made into a garment. And they have a whole closed loop system where they will work with the wholesalers and the retailers of their product to be able to take it back and to reprocess it back into the corn and the original material, which can then be processed back into a fiber. So they have a full closed loop system here. But again, we can see it relies on a lot of different stakeholders in order to be successful. And thinking back to the traceability and the idea of the DNA technology being impregnated into a garment like this, we start to see these layers of whole systems building up. But that takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of technology. And these are things that in Scotland we have real heritage of building fibre textile technology. And it's just, where are we going now with these technologies? And I've been talking a lot about polymer and the problems of polymer, but we still do have up to, we're about 65% in the system right now. And here we have the original petrochemical based company, Teijin EcoCircle, who came up with the first closed loop polymer based valorization system. And Patagonia were one of the first sportswear companies to come on board as early as 2005, when EcoCircle closed loop recycling system was implemented. But on speaking to Teijin, what we find is that a key challenge is critical mass. So in order for this system to work, to get this full closed loop polymer and to make sure that we have the quality of polymer that we can process back into a powder, back into a yarn, and back into a product, we need that critical mass, and we need refined systems that really take that on board. And in order to do that, Teijin had to they redeveloped their plant and relocated to China, which this then was a step too far for Patagonia, and they have removed themselves from the picture at the moment on this technology. But we know that Patagonia are very concerned with their environmental footprint and have been pioneers in the circular economy for the last 60 years, and are beginning to really think about the amount of mass product that they are distributing globally, because of course at the heart of their business model is still a polymer-based material product. And it's watching Patagonia closely to see what new technologies they're coming up with in terms of natural regenerative fibers and the systems that they're going to implement within that. On the left-hand corner, you can see it's an image of a report from Japan from the time I visited Teijin and other companies implementing circular technologies to accelerate circularity in Japan. But here we have a British company, Merrill Fabrics, and Merrill are really committed to closed loop fiber processing. And they've created a circular fabric which is designed to be utilized and recycled in their circular system. It's from based on nylon 66, which is Merrill's primary fiber, which is soft and proven not to shed. In terms of microplastics, they say that there's almost negligible shedding throughout the production and consumer use. And they've created a dye technology which allows dyeing without any water or harmful solvents. As the process starts with the molecules, this allows integration of key performance characteristics. And they use Nylstar's hydrogen technology is used to treat the nylon. So this is a really technical process. And I think whilst we're not all textile technologists, I think it's that sort of high level introduction to the technology. And what's really interesting about Merrill is that they're committed to using RAP's formula in terms of measuring their carbon waste and using the carbon waste and resource metric. So against that, they estimate that by using the RAP metric to calculate the Merrill environmental advantage, just for example, 5,000 t-shirts at an average weight of 0.2 kilos reduces a ton of carbon. With the eco dyes, Merrill's eco dye, it requires no water and a lower temperature than usual dyeing methods, as it is added before spinning as a dry substance. In turn, less energy is required and fewer emissions are created. Merrill highlights a water saving of 5,000 million litres for 500 tonnes of Merrill fabric compared to cotton. They also require no solvents or silicone, and dyeing as a polymer allows greater fastness. And here we have, I mentioned microfibers earlier on, and we have some fantastic initiatives from textile technologists who have collaborated to come together as the Microfiber Consortium. And their vision is to work towards zero impact from fiber fragmentation from textiles to the natural environment. The Microfiber Consortium facilitates the development of practical solutions for the textile industry to minimize fiber fragmentation and release to the environment from manufacturing and the product life cycle. And the Microfiber 2030 commitment presents the opportunity to align globally as an industry and have real impact on microfiber release by bringing together brands, retailers, manufacturers, research, academic and industry experts. This collaborative approach enables a level of deep understanding that would be unattainable for a standalone organization. And when we just think about circular economy and circularity and that whole loop system, collaboration is critical. Collaboration is key to creating these transparent supply chains, these circular systems, by each stakeholder having an equal part to play together in creating a system. And here we see in terms of post-consumer fibre, this is another company from Scotland, Nathan's Waste Savers, who have now joined Textile Recycling International. Nathan's is one of the UK's leading post-consumer textile collection companies. And from their collection and sorting, they then provide services to different clients globally, where they package clothing for different clients and sectors. And what they have now began to do is work with partners to identify how to develop yarn from post-consumer clothing and textile that is the most hard to resell or to pass on. And they've been able to work with international companies to come up with the yarn on the right. They also, you can see a sample of what is mattress wadding. Traditionally, as sort of processed fibre, rough processed fibre sheets have been used. Shoddy has been used in the in fibre in mattress production, and consumers don't always know that this is in their product, and we're still in an evolving stage of understanding how consumers feel about that. And there is something in terms of consumer behaviour that we really need to start transitioning to be really comfortable with the idea of post-consumer fibre, post-consumer textile, even the idea of recycled plastic bottle garments. Whilst that is not an ideal system, it's still, for some consumers, the idea of anything recycled is a substandard quality, therefore is rejected. And going forward, as we have a finite of resource on the planet, we really need to begin to shift our attitudes and experiences towards repurposed, reused, recirculated fibres and materials. Here we see Pages Valenti, an Italian company who, since 1953, they have been processing post-industrial fibre or pre-consumer recycled fibre. So their sort of main areas of textile would be post-industrial bed sheeting or towels. Up to 1 million tonnes of bedding a month is discarded throughout Europe in terms of hotels, and is discarded. So the idea that Pages Valenti as a spinner are able to process that fibre, break down that post-industrial product, as well as unsold apparel collections. It's still a real frustrating taboo for the apparel industry that they insist, some brands insist on destroying garments that are no longer suitable for the season. And so those garments, rather than be destroyed through incineration or landfill, are sold on to Pages Valenti to be processed into a new regenerated fibre yarn. And that fibre yarn might be mixed with a virgin cotton potentially a mixed fibers such as a polymer, a virgin cotton, and the regenerated fiber yarn, just to give it more strength, elasticity. And this in itself, the idea of blended fiber can be quite problematic. But can be problematic, but at the same time, depending on, again, the system, the take-back schemes, the traceability in the supply chain, we are evolving technologies that can begin to work with those blended yarns. And here we have, I've just got one example of yarn dyeing, and this is Daiku technology, which was developed in 2012 to develop and grow the supercritical CO2 textile processing technology by using carbon dioxide as the application medium. So Daiku's innovative technology eliminates the use of water in the textile dyeing process. The Dutch-based Daiku, founded in March 2008, and is the world's first supplier of industrial CO2 dyeing equipment, leading the field in dyeing technology and processing. It enabled the textile industry to have an environmentally sustainable operation by reducing the amount of water and energy consumed during the dyeing process and lowering the amount of CO2 emitted and waste generated. And whilst we have cottage industry, we have natural dyeing, we have different types of dyeing, we have 3D printing on textile, which also reduces the need for water. Daiku is one of the most advanced commercial companies, and the reason to highlight that is in the challenge of scalability. And what we've found in our company when we've been researching suppliers of any kind of new fiber, new technology, it's been about watching out for who has actually been able to have scalability, who has been able to scale up and have a product actually on the market and easily accessible. And Daiku is one of those brands that are fully integrated into the market. In terms of textile and garment technology to enable zero waste and circularity, we have Wayfan, and a very their strapline is we effing can, which again just gives that, I suppose it gives that edge to something. It draws attention to something that is a pretty complex conceptual idea. The idea of zero waste weaving technology, whole garment weaving technology. This is their first prototype, which is a pair of trousers. It's using existing weaving technology that they've designed and a 3D automated system to create a product in one step, aiming for zero waste. We know that there can be up to 25% waste in the cut and sew textile process, and generally companies do not have time to regenerate that fiber, and so it tends to go to landfill. Whereas if we can develop these systems of whole garment or zero waste technology, it removes the need to weave a fabric and then cut and sew and finish a garment. The technology is designed to simultaneously weave the yarn, structure the garment, and add form without waste. Doing this in one step allows great progress in reducing the transport costs of a product, as each stage of the process is within the same system, bringing the core production into one place. And all of this is automated, helping to reduce cost and time to produce a garment. This can lead the way forward in reducing pre-consumer waste, allowing retailers to fulfill orders more on demand while reduce the need to create lots of products before any orders. So just thinking back to Paige's Valenti and the fact that they take this post industrial waste, this pre-consumer surplus, there would be there'd be a reduced need for that as new systems come into play. And here we have, in terms of knitting, we have a similar technology, but for knitting, this technology has been available for the last 30 years from Shimashiki, a Japanese company. And whole garment knitting technology is used a lot in the medical field. We see here a compression stocking. They also make compression bandages, and that enables a single yarn to be used and no seams, no cutting and sewing. And we can just see that illustrated on the left. When we look at the yellow silhouette on the top left, we can see the cut and sew process of a garment, whereas when we come to the forefront and we see the lilac dress, we begin to see that it is a whole floating silhouette. And on the bottom left-hand corner, we can see a garment coming off of the knitting machine, which is a whole garment, one whole knitted piece that now doesn't need to be cut and sewn, and all of the finishing needs to be all that needs to be done now is the finishing on the garment. There are Scotland's leading knitwear companies who do already use Shimashiki, and some of them do use whole garment knitting technology. But this is a technology in our own sector in Scotland that could be more widely used. And Shimashiki representatives in Scotland actually deliver training for those interested in understanding, maybe thinking about a career change, or any young person thinking of going into the industry. They do full training courses that take someone from introduction to the basic flatbed knitting machine right up to training on this whole garment knitwear technology, which again, by really accelerating this idea of whole garment zero waste product, accelerates Scotland's place in that sustainable product export market that the Scottish Textile Leadership Group really want to see and have a commitment to. And so it's about, sometimes it's not always about what we're doing in the lab. It's not always about the future and thinking about what new technologies do we need to create. It's about understanding what we have on our doorstep that we can actually use to accelerate zero waste and textile circularity. And of course, to create, again, thinking back to the DNA traceability technology, if that was impregnated into a whole garment, there we have a whole garment system of zero waste and traceability working as one. So it's about how we combine these technologies to really create that zero waste whole garment system. And there is a whole open source zero waste movement, which key pioneers Timo Rissanen and Holly McQuillan have been at the forefront. This is their original book on the left-hand side, and I recommend it to anyone watching who is in the business of in the business of garment production. It is a really step-by-step guide to how you can develop pattern that is zero waste. And on the right, a young New York-based company, Decode, and they offer online patterns. This is one of their online patterns for sale. It is a pair of zero waste shorts, apparently a really good place to start if you're thinking about developing your skills in zero waste garment construction. Augmented fashion and immersive interactions for textiles is an emerging field, and Robert Gordon University, Gray School of Art, have been really at the forefront of championing augmented reality in textile, and they've been actually using it to work with our rural designer maker communities to help them to access digital access markets through digital platforms. This was particularly useful and trialed during the global pandemic, when the designers couldn't have clients into their studios, which often resulted in sales. But through an augmented reality online process, they could still offer a tailored service. And going forward, the concept of augmented fashion or digital technology again reduces that carbon footprint in terms of the prototyping of garments and the fitting process. It also enables really fantastic online digital creativity in the form of showcases and fashion shows, which again traditionally in the fashion industry have been resource and labor intensive for a very short-lived promotional period of time. So I think as we go forward, we will begin to see augmented reality technology more widely available. Apple has released their first augmented reality commercial headset. It's still very expensive, and the verdict is out on its usability. But the idea that it could be used as a commercial tool to support the reduction of the carbon footprint of a studio, but also to accelerate the market, is a very exciting combination of sustainability and business acceleration. This is the opposite end of the scale from digital technology, but a really lovely and important example of zero waste design in Scotland just now. This was a collaboration between Regine Denham, Siobhan McKenna and Christopher McAvoy. Siobhan McKenna is a garment designer known for her Regine post-consumer denim system of developing a textile into garments. Christopher McAvoy is an internationally renowned luxury weave designer, and they collaborated, they met and collaborated during the lockdown period, and were supported by Creative Scotland to come up with this new collection of couture garments that illustrate how you can use every part of post-consumer denim in a collection of garments. This has recently been exhibited in Glasgow, and I think plans are underway for a second exhibition tour, and I really highly recommend, if it comes to your area, to visit and inspect the process. What I like about the process and can be challenging when we're using post-consumer textile is that there is a process that Siobhan and Christopher, together with their really refined design skills, were able to take this post-consumer material with good design, with beautiful craftsmanship, and create a really commercial, well-designed luxury product, even right down to removing and using the brand tabs from the jeans and integrating them as applique onto the garment. So really demonstrating that creativity, that real refined craftsmanship that then creates a very high value product from what essentially could have gone to landfill. So going back to the beginning of my talk, there were two key areas. There was production and there was consumption and there was production. And just coming back to reducing consumption through circular textile business models, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is already well known, but I think it's just about iterating what can actually, why it's important to accelerate new business models. Before I go there, I just wanted to create this provocative slide, which is about fast closed loop cycles. And we talk about fast fashion. We know it's a huge issue in the market, and I really don't want to go down the route of blaming any sector of society. But what we can see is how fast do we want fast fashion? Because we have the technology to create a 24-hour system, or even quicker, of being able to take a pattern from the internet, download it, take it to a local department store, pop it into a 3D printing machine, out pops a 3D printed t-shirt or accessory. You take that home that day, put it on, go out, selfie yourself from every angle, wake up on Saturday morning thinking, oh my goodness, that just wasn't for me. I really need to get rid of that. Take it back to the store and reprocess it, put it back through a machine, and out pops a voucher either for another item or to save for later. And we know the components of this system exist. We know that we could create this system as a service if the right collaborators were working together. But my key question and challenge is, just because this system exists, is fashion the best way to use this system? We know that, so just for example, in South Korea, we found out that 97% of face coverings went to landfill during the global pandemic. And in other parts of the world, there is more fear of daily air pollution than of disease. And so face coverings are being continuously worn. Therefore, can we think about how we use this technology, how we develop systems that these single-use items that we have been using in an essential way in society, how do we create systems that enable us to reprocess, to reuse these products that are considered single-use? And so it's just about really putting it out there to think about what problems are we trying to solve, and not just replacing one textile with another, one system with another to come out with the same outcome. Going back to the reality is we need to reduce the amount of polymer, fossil fueled polymer driven textile fiber that we are using in our systems. We need to reduce consumption. We know that we have over 118 items, and that's at a conservative estimate in our wardrobes. 40% are never worn. So we know that in the main, we have an abundance of stuff in our homes, whether that's furniture, clothing, household goods. So we have to really think about these new technologies. What is the best way to use them, and what's the problem that we're trying to solve? As I said, up to 40% of the average wardrobe is never worn. So it's about circulating, not accumulating. More textile in our home, whether that's the amount of cushions we have, the amount of interiors, the amount of clothing we have. It's the challenge of storage. It's the challenge of having that amount of textile in the home. It can attract pests. if not treated and cleaned appropriately and aired out regularly. For example, as I record this right now, it's the height of the moth season, which can cause severe damage. A moth infestation can cause severe damage across a whole household. So we need to increase the need for new resources for textile production. The idea that we have too much stuff, that we're holding on to stuff, increases the need for new resource and textile production. And this is where we really need to think about our business models and how we can support consumers to reduce their consumption, but still have a fantastic experience with the products that the textile products that they access. And just to give you, again, another global example, a high-end brand, this is Ralph Lauren, and this is their subscription service model. You can, if you subscribe, you can have 4 items at a time based on availability, and there's no return period. And what Ralph Lauren say about one of their impetus for setting up this business model was also to they know that they are going to, in return, receive a lot of data about what consumers are doing, what their preferences are, how they're treating garments, how they're wearing garments. There is a communication channel there. There is a dialogue. There is more of a relationship. Just thinking about that linear model where a brand, a high street brand, we go in, we buy a product, we come out, end of story. Whereas this is giving us an opportunity, or giving Ralph Lauren an opportunity to have a relationship with their customers, to learn more about their customers for that business benefit, which again then strengthens the business model. So there is something to be learned from bigger brands trying these models. It hasn't always worked with startups and newer companies to the market who require a lot of back-end investment to really make this model work. But I think it's really interesting to look at these global brands and how they are pivoting into the sustainability story, and whether their impetus is profit driven or both profit and purpose, whether it's working. So it's really important, I think, to look at that global market and what are the trends, and who is beginning to evolve their model of rental, leasing, subscription. In the UK, we are accelerating these subscription models. This is the Little Loop, as seen on Dragon's Den. So we have seen other sustainability stories on Dragon's Den before, but I think what's really lovely about Little Loop is it's a business model that works for people's needs. It really addresses the life stages of a consumer. Children grow rapidly, they grow out of clothing rapidly. The first 16 years of our lives, we're continuously growing, changing, and our clothing needs to change with us. Therefore, really evaluating the market, understanding what the opportunities are in terms of consumer lifestyles and consumer life stages to create business models that really work with consumers. We have seen a lot of fashion rental and really exciting models that are maturing and retaining their place in the market. But where I see gaps is in that lifestyle. Where are business models that are addressing household needs. And I think that's a real gap that is worth exploring. And the Little Loop business model itself, Little Loop are very vocal about the challenges. They're a very sharing company in terms of the challenges involved in setting up a subscription service model, a non-traditional retail model. And again, worth really looking and researching the Little Loop model to understand the challenges and opportunities of business models that circulate clothing rather than sell it out, really. And as we get to the end of the presentation, we can see this is ACS Clothing. They've had a lot of success recently. They are the back end of clothing subscription rental and leasing. And they have clients who are soft competitors of Little Loop, like Bundleys and another children's subscription service model. ACS work with high fashion brands, luxury brands, and their whole purpose is to keep a garment in use, to service the rental of that garment, and that includes repairing, maintenance, stain removing, ensuring that the product can have several life cycle uses before no longer able to be worn. But ACS as a company have really integrated the circular economy within their business model, and they see it as at the heart of their business, which includes their ozone chemical-free cleaning process. Dry cleaning or garment cleaning often is criticised for the amount of chemicals involved in it, and ACS have taken care to research and develop at every stage of their process throughout the 25 years to get them to this award-winning stage of being the UK and potentially into Europe's leading rental service company. And I really recommend that ACS, again, a very caring, sharing company, really keen to get businesses along, to share their story and to show their model. And I really encourage anyone who hasn't been to ACS, even if you're not interested in clothing, if that's not your business, just to go to see the model and to have a chat with the advocates, the staff at ACS. This is a sort of higher end retail brand, Toast, and they have this, again, a sort of integrated culture into their company that's about treating their customers as part of their company, building a relationship. This is the Toast Circle, where as a client of Toast, you can, if you have a used garment that you no longer want and it's in good condition, you can bring it to the store, you can put it on a rail and tell a little story, just a few words about the garment, and you can then select a garment to take from the rail. So it's a swapping system essentially, and this rail is situated within the retail store next to garments that are for sale, demonstrating that confidence in the brand, demonstrating that confidence to build this relationship with their customers, that it's not always about the sale, it's about customer loyalty, it's about enabling longevity of a product that was essentially designed to be designed to last, but that doesn't always mean, because a product is designed to last, that we as consumers want to keep that product for a long time. And perhaps our circumstances change, our bodies change, we are constantly going through change. And that idea of the fluidity of the products that we access, rather than the burden of ownership, is highly beneficial to consumers moving forward in a carbon pressured climate in crisis. This is an example from Japan, and I really love the play on words, pass the baton, that idea of passing on something, really nice visual, just that you're handing over like a relay. I own something, I use something, now I'm passing it on to someone else to use. And what I really liked about this company was they were a vintage retro apparel store that also sold vintage objects and curiosities, and they used the term new cycle. So rather than recycle or pre-loved, or rather than drawing attention to the old, they were emphasizing that this was new to the next person. So I really liked that play on words. But what was really exciting was you had this lovely vintage store in a chic retail shopping mall in central Tokyo, right next to the Marc Jacobs flagship store. And that's something that in Scotland I'm still not seeing. I'm still not seeing in the new, more recent shopping malls being developed. I don't see space for second-hand, for new cycle garments or items or furniture. And there is a real opportunity there to create really new and exciting spaces in major retail hubs. And we just need to have our retail partners, our retail mall owners to build consumer confidence, to build their confidence, and to take the consumer with them in this second-hand market. And we can say 54% of UK consumers shop second-hand, or we can say only 54% of UK consumers shop second-hand, because there is still a lot of stigma in society around that idea of second-hand having related to hygiene, being related to being not suitable as an alternative to new. But these are the cycles, the psychological cycles that we need to break as consumers. Why do we always want new? Is a key challenge for consumers. So therefore, how do we make that proposition of something second-hand, something pre-loved, something post-consumer? How do we ensure that we tell the right narrative, that we show it in the right way that will be attractive to the next consumer? So just to recap on everything that I've shared with you, I started off, it's about raw material choice. It's about regenerative fibers, natural fibers over fossil fueled petrochemical based materials. It's about yarn selection, choosing natural yarns, buying local where possible, developing relationships with local yarn producers. With product design, it's about textile with zero waste design, designing out waste with the help of technology, with the help of pattern design. With product manufacturing, creating that zero waste, again, using technology like the whole garment technology. And of course, good design, good craftsmanship, whether that's developed through digital augmented reality tools, or 3D printing. It's about that, or it's that hand craftsmanship, but it's about good design, good craftsmanship. And then we have the circular business models, and that's about problem solving for consumers. What are the problems that need to be solved that will really help us to accelerate the textile sustainability, the textile circularity journey? And underpinning all of this, going right back to the beginning of my talk, is traceability. How do we start to embed traceability in our product development systems? How do we either develop our own systems, identify technologies, collaborate with technologists to embed traceability systems so that as designers, producers, we understand the responsibility that we have to know where our product is going? Because really, can you truly say that you are a sustainable brand or that you're working towards sustainability, circularity, if you don't know where your product's going to end up? And so just to finish with some inspiration, my favorite designer and whole inspiration in sustainable textile is Issey Miyake. And Issey says the purpose of where I start is the idea of use. It's not recycling, it's reuse. It's about really changing our mindsets and thinking what's around us, what can we reuse, what can we repurpose, what can we redesign, what can we reshape, and what can we enjoy as consumers as well as producers. Thank you very much for listening. This has been a whistle-stop tour of fibre, textile and product design with Textile. I really look forward to your comments on the presentation, and I hope it's been helpful. Thank you very much for listening. Please get in touch if you have any questions about textile circularity or this presentation. Thank you very much.